Hello YouTubers, I am back with my 2013 Volt. It has now been a month since I've owned this car. Been commuting with it for a month, so I thought this would probably be a good time to check in, talk a little bit about what I think of it after a month, what I experienced, little quirks and niggling issues that I've noticed in the time I've been driving it. Let me start off with still the biggest thing about this car to me is how quiet it is. The electric motor doesn't really make any noise. It just drives. There's no engine whine. I think I'm pretty much used to that at this point. It's still a little disconcerting sometimes to turn on the car, nothing happens, but yet it's ready to go. Sort of a funny quirk about how little noise this car makes is that because the electric motor doesn't make so much noise, it's almost like the rest of the car, some of the other settings has to make up for that little amount of noise that it makes. This car loves to talk to people. It loves to talk to me. Everything you do, it seems, every interaction with this car that you seem to go through involves it honking at you for some reason. Everything. The biggest one that got me, and I had to do some reading and some research to figure out what was going on. When you charge the car, it doesn't matter if you've got the portable cord plugged in or if you're on an actual charge station. If you unplug the car while it's locked, it sets off the alarm. Now I understand why, because it thinks that maybe someone is trying to steal your portable charge cord, and that's like a couple $100 part, so I get it, but it's something I never expected, especially because the Volt does know the difference between being plugged in with its portable cord and being plugged into a charge station. If you look on the My Chevrolet app, it will tell you what kind of charge unit it's plugged into. But it doesn't matter if you're using the portable cord, you unplug it, you're hooked up to a 240 volt charge station, you unplug it, sets off the alarm. Unless you unlock the car first. Now you can turn that off in the settings, and I actually have done so because I don't want that. I did that a couple times at work and a couple times in my garage, and when you leave before the rest of your family gets up, it's not a good thing to have your car alarm going off inside the garage. Another thing, so I said it loves to honk at you. Yeah, it does. If you shut the door and there's a fob in it and it thinks you're going somewhere, you get a triple honk. Lock the car with the remote, it honks. It just seems like every interaction with this car means it wants to talk to you, almost as if it needs to make up for the fact that the engine or the electric motor doesn't make any noise. Talking about the noise this car doesn't make, I've thought about this. I think for a while I was unsure of when the gas generator kicks on, whether the noise it makes, how comparable that is to a normal gas-powered car. Because it's pretty noticeable when it kicks on to actually do range extending mode and charge the battery, but I couldn't decide, is it making that much noise or is it not really making that much noise? It's just the fact that in contrast to the normal everyday driving where the battery isn't making any noise, does it just seem that loud? And I think I've come to the conclusion that it really is that loud. It's not deafening, I don't want to overplay, but it is definitely noticeable when the engine kicks on and the noise it makes. And continuing at that, another thing that's thrown me that I've had to get used to is when the generator kicks on, the noise, the revs that it makes has not necessarily any relation to what you're doing with the car at that moment. Whether you've got the cruise control, you're just driving along very easy, not accelerating. that doesn't make a difference to what the gasoline powered engine generator is doing. It is the computer is controlling it. It operates completely independently of what you're doing with the throttle pedal. And speaking of the throttle pedal, it's noticeable when the generator kicks on because of the noise, but it's much more noticeable because you feel it. And I feel it through the throttle pedal. I can feel the throttle pedal vibrate whenever the generator kicks on. That's not something I'm used to, and that's definitely a quirk about the Volt that I have not experienced in a gasoline powered car. So another sort of small issue that I've noticed with the Volt, it's actually, as I've done some reading about it, it's fairly common. Getting my iPhone to work with the infotainment system has been a little bit of an adventure. And now, before I get too deep into this, let me go ahead and put this disclaimer. My iPhone, I have an iPhone 6. It is 2.5 years old. It is in need of replacement. iPhone. My battery is starting to fail. It's definitely not holding the charge it once did. Getting a lot of lockups, crashes. So, yeah, I can't, whatever issues I'm having with my iPhone and the Volt's infotainment system, I can't completely blame on the Volt. However, if you do some reading in some forums, do a little bit of research, you'll see I'm not the only one that's having iPhone fun with their infotainment system. And now whenever I plug it into the USB port, the infotainment system sees it and starts to try and index it. But I've got 30 plus gigs of music saved on my iPhone, and so it never finishes. At least I've never been in the car long enough to let it finish. If it ever will, I don't know. I also mentioned, I think in a previous video, how the USB port was a little weak, to where if I plugged up my phone, it would keep it charged, or it'd keep it at the same charge level when I plugged it in, but it would never actually charge it more. It stayed pretty steady. Maybe you get 1%, 2%, but it never really charged it back up to full. So I ended up switching over. I had just an Amazon basic car charge, 2-port USB car charger that I put in here, ran the USB lightning cable back to it, and then I just stream everything via Bluetooth. The sound quality is not quite as good going through Bluetooth as it would be from just a normal, just running through the cable, but it's comparable, especially when you listen to podcasts like I do a lot. That sound fidelity doesn't really matter that much. So let's talk about the big thing, the headline. How does it drive? Is it doing what I want? Yes, the Bolt is performing and doing exactly what I thought it would when I bought it. I'm going back and forth to work. I'm not using any gas at all. I'm battery all the time, whether or not I get a charge at work. I don't have to get on the 240 volt charge station at work to have enough battery to get home. I've got plenty left over. So in that aspect, the car is working out great. It is what I wanted in a commuter car. I wanted something that was quiet, comfortable, and didn't use any gas, and it is doing that perfectly. I've talked about that I can get back and forth to and from work on just battery. I am now finally starting to not focus and pay so much attention to the range meter on the dash. And I didn't anticipate that I would do this, because the entire point of buying a plug-in hybrid like the Volt is that you don't really need to worry about the electric range. If the battery runs out, that's okay. You've got a gas generator that will get you 300 plus more miles. This is not like a Leaf or another electric car or a Tesla. You run out of battery, that's where you're at. That's where your car is, and it's not going anywhere until you charge it. The Volt doesn't have that problem. You just keep going and use the range extending mode for the generator. But despite that, I still, for a good 2 weeks, almost 3 weeks of commuting daily in this car, I focused more, really like a laser, on how much range I had left, worried that I was going to run out. And I think it was more because I was still at that point worried that I had made a bad choice, and that all the math and the calculations and the thinking about getting back and forth to work on just battery was going to be wrong, and I was going to need some gas. Now granted, I'm still, even if the engine kicked on for 2 miles, that's still a fraction of the gas I was using in a 99 Corolla that burned a quart of oil every 1,000 miles. But still, I had that fear. And so I focused for quite a while. I think for the first probably week and a half I had this car, I got on the 240 volt charge station by work whenever I could, just because I wanted to be sure I had enough. But now, I've done it a few times where I haven't been on the station, and I've had plenty. It's been fine. So I finally started to let go and just trust, yes, I have enough range. Yes, I'm going to be able to get back and forth on the battery. Yeah, I don't need to worry about this. Everything I thought would happen with this car it's working just fine. Some other things about driving it. I've touched on this previously. I want to re-emphasize it. The traction control in this car is super aggressive. It will step in if it thinks there's any kind of tire squealing, lateral G about to be exhibited by this car. It will step in and put a stop to that very quickly. It's kind of annoying. It's a little too much. So what I've done whenever I go on entrance ramps to the highway, or when I go home, there's a small section of road that's got a few curves and hills. I have become very familiar with the traction control defeat button up there, so I can actually have a little bit of fun when I drive the car. In conjunction with that, I've touched on this. Let me expand upon it, because it is driving me. This is probably, of all the things that drive me crazy about this car, well, that's probably a little strong. Of all the things I don't like, this is number one. The tires on this car, they're OEM, they're Goodyear Assurance tires. I assume, given the mileage and the age, these are original. They are garbage. They are absolute garbage. They have very little lateral grip. And the worst part, they are terrible in the rain. I mentioned before, I drove, before this car, a little 99 Corolla. Front wheel drive, just like the Bolt. This car has tires about that wide. They're basically dinner plates. Whenever it rained, come up to a stoplight, stop sign, whenever you got going again, without fail, the tires would spin. And so you would just put the pedal down a little ways, the car would try and get going, the tires would just spin and then try to grab. And everyone running around you was looking at you stupid, like, why are you flooring it, dude? It's raining. You're not going anywhere. This damn Bolt does the same thing. These tires do the same thing. And it's even exacerbated with the Bolt because, it's an electric motor. 100% of the torque this motor is capable of putting out is available at 0 RPM. You give it any kind of throttle, you've got all that torque and it's working immediately, and the tires just spin. This is still an economy car. It's not an econo box. I think it's got a lot of features. It's too much to call it a luxury car, but it is, I feel it's comparable to the other car we have, the big family car that we have is Toyota Avalon. That's basically Toyota's sort of near luxury car. That's the most luxurious car they sell short of a Lexus. It's very quiet, rides very smooth. It's got a lot of room, which is why we bought it. And I think this car is comparable to that. And so it rides very nice, it drives very comfortably. But I say, but it's still an economy car in as far as its power. You stop it from 60, it's going to take, I think, 10 seconds to get there. But it feels much faster than that when you drive it every day because of the electric motor, because of all that torque of the electric motor being available from 0 RPM. This is a great car, like any electric car really, to scoot around in town. You've got torque to get you from 0 to 30 pretty quickly. You're able to kind of squirt in amongst traffic at those speeds. Feels much faster than it actually is. This is definitely not a Tesla. You're not going to out drag race anybody. But from a stoplight, you might make it to that next little hole in traffic that you're trying to hit. So overall, I've been driving this car a month now, and I really like it. I talk about some of the issues that I have with it, things I've discovered, just so if someone out there decides they want to Volt, things they can start to expect with it. But overall, I do like it, and I'm very happy with it. It is performing exactly as I thought and hoped it would. I think that's pretty much all I have to say about the Volt at this point. I'm sure as I discover more things, I'll add some more videos later.